Hello, Meneses. If you're not familiar with my podcast, Joyride covers topics about celebrities, movies, music reviews, and it's pretty opinion based. So I will be using my opinion a lot, but all opinions are welcome. This is technically my third episode, but my first official episode here in the studio. So let's give it a go. Today's topics are going to be two movies that have hit the box office recently in the month of September and what's coming to Netflix this month. Okay, so first off is It Chapter 2, released like about 2 weeks ago. I got to see it last Saturday, and once I knew I was going to go see it, I did what I always did, which I look at Rotten Tomato scores. I'm going to be using Rotten Tomatoes a lot in this podcast, and I know that it's either like here or there because some critics hate a movie and then the audience loves it. So I'm going to be putting in the critics' reviews, but it's okay if you don't agree with them because I will be saying the audience score as well. If you're familiar with It Chapter 2 or the It franchise, Chapter 2 is about the Losers Club returning to their hometown in order to stop the murders once and for all. The Losers Club was a pretty big success with fans compared to, I'd say, the first movie. Chapter 2, I've seen a lot more like teenagers talking about it and getting into the fandom. However, critics did not agree with It Chapter 2. They didn't really hold back on their reviews. For example, a lot of critics say that the storylines just progressed too long, and the movie, which is 3 hours long, should have been a lot shorter if they had cut down on backstories because we'd all seen the first It ever, and then It Chapter 1. So It Chapter 2 kind of went a little too far back in their opinions. In my opinion, I think that it did go a little too much into the backstories of each character. Obviously, we know every character's fears, like Richie's afraid of clowns, and Beverly's afraid of being a woman. But something that I think is what they did really well, which they pretty much always do really well, is Bill Skarsgård's acting as Pennywise. Because after all the interviews I've seen with him and all of the red carpet interviews as well, he's a pretty nice guy. And to see him look like this terrifying clown that scares children and eats children, I feel like that acting is not something that you can just pull out of a hat. So I want to give Bill Skarsgård big recognition for this movie. Critics also say that his acting was pretty good, but actors sometimes don't always have their best role. The critic score for this film was a 64%, but the audience score was an 80%, and most audience members gave it a 4-star review. If I had to give It Chapter 2 a 5-star review, I'd probably say like a 4, maybe 3.5, mainly because I felt like the film was a little too long. I won't lie, I kept checking my watch a couple times, waiting for it to end. But I was happy with the ending. It's a very satisfying ending, in my opinion. However, another film that somewhat hit the box office recently is Downton Abbey. I say somewhat because the film doesn't come out until this Friday, the 19th, no, the 20th. But considering I love Downton Abbey, and I've been a fan of Downton Abbey for a while, I was able to see it last Thursday, a little early screening, and I was in a huge movie theater with a bunch of adults, and I took my mom. She's never even seen it. If you don't know what Downton Abbey is, it's a show that takes place in the early 1900s, and it started out as a show. It's about the upstairs and downstairs, as my mom says, which is like the rich people, the Crawleys, who live upstairs, and then there's service downstairs, so like the housemaids, the maids, all that stuff. But then, after 6 seasons, and it did really well, they decided to make a film about it, and the critic reviews are really, really good. I was a little nervous about seeing the movie, mainly because I hadn't seen the show since it finished. It had 6 seasons, ran for a while, and I was afraid that putting it on the big screen was going to ruin the whole effect of like, this is how I sit and I binge. But in my opinion, the movie had probably the most satisfying ending, considering I hadn't seen like this cast in forever. It was a pretty big deal to see them like this time on a huge big screen. I don't have any critical reviews. The only thing out of the whole movie, it was a 2-hour movie, was there was one scene which I won't say because it does ruin some of the plot. But the way that they filmed it, they had really quick shots, and compared to the normal way that they filmed the show and pretty much the rest of the movie, the shots are really slow, and like the quick shots just did not match. Like the quick shots of that scene did not match the film or the show at all. But I mean, after I've seen all of those 6 seasons and this movie, this is probably my favorite movie of September, and I know it's a little early to say that, but I'd been waiting so long for this movie, and I'd say that compared to It Chapter 2, this is probably my favorite movie. Critics gave it a 78%, and the audience scores aren't out yet because technically the film isn't out yet. But in my opinion, my audience score, I'd give it like a 99.9. That one scene cut it a little for me, but I was very satisfied with the ending, and I'm happy that even though Downton Abbey is over, it ended the way that I wanted it to end. So that's all for the movies this month that have come out. Of course, there's a ton of other movies that I'll probably cover briefly in my next episode, which will be about the Emmys, but I will touch base on a little bit of those. So next up, we have what's coming to Netflix in this month of September. Most of these have already come out, and one that I'm about to say, I will be telling you how the critics view it, which I won't be doing for all of them. But in September, well, in the month of September, through the first week of September, they released Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and Two Towers. Netflix also released Walking Dead Season 9, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6, and a new Netflix miniseries called Unbelievable, which I'd never heard of Unbelievable, and this came out last weekend. The premise is basically this teenage girl, who is interviewed by these 2 female detectives because she claims that she was mishandled at one point in her life. And they're basically trying to decide if this story's real or not. The critics really liked this movie. This miniseries got a 94%, and the audience gave it an 80%. I haven't seen it myself yet, so I'm not going to put my opinion on it, but this was released on the 13th of September, and it did really well for Netflix. So this weekend, Disenchantment Part 2, which is another Netflix original, is coming out. And then on Tuesday of next week, American Horror Story Apocalypse will be released on Netflix. It's been on Fox or FX, obviously, and I've seen all the American Horror Stories. This one I was very excited for because it covers Murder House, Coven, and Cult, which are 3 of its other seasons, and it all ties into one story. However, I thought Apocalypse just wasn't what I wanted. It felt really boring to sit and watch, especially because I thought I was going to see all of the original characters from those 3 seasons, Murder House, Coven, and Cult. But in reality, they didn't really they focused more on Coven compared to the other ones. And I was pretty unsatisfied. It was probably my least favorite season of American Horror Story, which I hate to say because I was so hyped up for it. But the critics feel the same way. They feel like the story was a little dragged on and a little dramatized compared to those other 3 seasons. And audience score was pretty low, so I'm not going to get too into that. But this wasn't the best American Horror Story season in many people's opinions. The cast for American Horror Story, if you've never seen it, they pretty much use the same cast. So for Apocalypse, they used Sarah Paulson, Evan Peters, Jessica Lange, Kathy Bates, Cody Fern, and a lot of other people. They basically use the same people every single season, but with different roles, and they do really amazing. I won't say the acting was bad in Apocalypse, because it really wasn't, but it wasn't my favorite season. The number one show or movie that I'm excited for coming to Netflix will be on the 27th of September, which is called The Politician, and it is starring Jessica Lange, who's from American Horror Story, Ben Platt, Gwyneth Paltrow, Lucy Boynton, and a lot more. I'm a really big fan of Lucy Boynton, so I'm really excited to see this. It's about a high school student named Peyton that really wants to be president, but first he has to go through high school. And all of the promo and the trailer that they released recently, it just looks like a very modernized way to look at politics. And I do love politics at times, but I feel like this is a more, like, touches more base with me, and it's, on a scale of a high school student, even though Ben Platt is not a high school student in real life. He plays one, and I'm pretty excited to see how he tries his best to deal with high school while thinking about being president. So that's all of the main things coming to Netflix this month. There are many more. You can check out Netflix's website to see those. But that's pretty much it. The Politician and American Horror Story, Unbelievable, those are all of the big things that people are anticipating to come to Netflix. So you can look out for those. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening. This is my 3rd episode, as I said before, but this is my first in the studio having like a camera on me. Normally it's just me and my voice and my little cousin. I hope you enjoyed the topics I covered today, and you might have not enjoyed my opinions, but it's an opinion-based podcast. I hope that you guys listen to my future shows, because next episode, I will be covering the Emmys, which will be taking place this Sunday, September 22nd at 7 p.m. on ABC Central Time. And I'm really excited to see who takes these home. If you've never seen the Emmys, it's more for TV compared to movies. The Oscars is more movie-based. So I'm really excited to see. I know Game of Thrones has a ton of awards that they're up for, which they always do. And so does Barry with, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. Bill Hader. Thank you. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you guys next episode.
Come here to me, but don't come here. Take my words with a grain of salt. 'Cause remember, honey, you can follow